So, how did the idea for Hypercar Invitational come about? I think just like anything that you're passionate about, you spend so much time on it, and then you start noticing things that maybe other people haven't noticed, but you just start focusing. And in my case, I would go to as many car shows as I could have time for and or afford. And I remember looking at some of the people that were kind of my heroes, like Horacio Pagani and Alois Roof and Christian Koenigsegg, guys that had started something from scratch and built up these beautiful companies, these beautiful projects, and noticed how much time they spent talking to thousands of people and explaining a product which really, had the product been able to be in motion, wouldn't have needed any explaining. It would have, breathed by itself. And I just kept thinking, you've got these auto shows with these cars on these stands, but the gasoline smell, the sounds, and everything else aren't able to be communicated. They're just sitting there static. There's got to be a better way. Around probably 2016, 2017, I went to Goodwood Festival of Speed for the first time. And I was completely blown away, and I thought, okay, this is exactly how it should be done. Because now you are bringing together all of these fans, all of these enthusiasts, and they get to see cars that normally you only see in TV in motion, right? And these car companies are able to connect to the buyers and the next generation of enthusiasts. There's got to be a way to replicate that for the US, even if we don't have, the castle that Lord of March has at Goodwood. There's just got to be a way. That was the seed that planted in my brain. Then I realized that I wanted to do something about it. I just didn't know how to start. So around 2018, I was talking to some friends in Atlanta, real die-hard car guys, about this idea of creating a more experiential version of a dynamic auto show. And I didn't know what it was called, and I really didn't know what it looked like. I just know what it should feel like. Well, thanks to the help of so many people, we were able to rent out Road Atlanta and put some really amazing cars on track, including the Carrera GT, the Holy Trinity with the 918, and the Ferrari and the P1, and incredibly, Pagani donated Huayra BC, which was just, had never happened before, right? Their cars had never been allowed to be on track next to other cars. And we were able to shoot some footage with Randy Popst, one of the coolest guys in the automotive and racing journalism world. And the goal was just to give people like us, enthusiasts who only saw some of these cars on YouTube or on TV, the opportunity to hear from regular guys next to the Randy Popsts of the world what these cars felt like to drive. And we just shot it in a very amateur fashion and threw it up on YouTube. And the comments that we got were really special. They were really motivating because people said, I've never gotten that perspective. I always hear from a journalist. I never get to hear really from a car guy what these cars are like to drive and experience. I felt really close to the action. I felt close to that car. And I'm like, I think we're just starting to touch on what this could be. We've got to keep working at this. And we didn't even know it was called Hypercar Invitational at the time, but that's where it started. So we had tried this, right? We'd come up with this idea, people liked it. Now the question was, how do you develop this, right? Like, what can this be? We're talking about no resources and just pure passion, and some individuals who were buying into this idea of creating something special for the US market to bring people closer to these cars in a way that felt authentic. But we really didn't know how to do it. And so just like anything else, you go out and pitch your idea. And we went and spoke to small manufacturers, and they listened. They had trust in the fact that we were going to do something that was positive for them, that was going to be something different to highlight their brands. Peter Nam of Gunther Works come to mind. He helped us. He said, look, okay, I like what you're doing. I'd love to come and speak to a very select audience of potential buyers for my cars. Let's do it. Let me help you create Hypercar Invitational too. There were also brands like McLaren, Pagani again, and others who just had faith in this idea that I kept pitching basically to anybody who would listen. And the words dynamic auto show started making more sense, right? This idea of an auto show, no matter how small, but where the cars were in motion, you could smell the gasoline, hear the rubber, hear the engines, and really bring them to life so that it wasn't just about words, but it was actually the emotion, the experience of seeing these cars. Sometimes in life you have something that's maybe negative or unlucky for most, but it helps you. And in this case, when the pandemic started, this is in 2020, COVID took over, all the auto shows went away. Being indoors was a no-go. Having crowds of thousands of people was also something that was not acceptable. And so all of a sudden, we started getting phone calls from companies that were lighting up our phone and saying, what is this Hypercar Invitational? Can we show our car at your event? And so that's how we started. We had the opportunity to rent Laguna Seca. Again, thanks to a lot of people coming together, helping a very, very small, underfunded organization like ours and getting some major track days. And we created an outdoor auto show. It was for a very limited audience because that's all we could afford to do. But we brought together the designers, the founders, and the engineers that could tell the story behind the product they had created. And if I were to nail it down to one thing, I would say that was the key. It's the fact that if you can show your potential buyers your story, how you built a car, not its specs, not what the 0 to 60 times are, not anything like that. You can do that in an auto show, a static auto show. But telling the story of how these cars were created and the passion behind them, that made a difference. And we enabled our guests to come closer to these manufacturers and vice versa. And I think that's the magic formula. That's when we saw, okay, this idea, this experience can be more meaningful to everybody involved. We really should keep going. So 2020, we finished Hypercar Invitational 2. And at that point, we knew we had something. We knew that we had connected in a way that mattered. But then how did we improve on that? What was the formula going to look like? How do you become a dynamic auto show? What does that mean, right? And we did the same thing that you're supposed to do in any situation when you don't know. You ask your customers, and we asked for a lot of feedback, and we heard good and bad. And it's really humbling when you hear some bad feedback, and it's really nice when you hear, hey, that really makes a difference. This is really good for our company. Or our guests said, the guys that were and girls who were, probably pretty jaded, they'd been to every luxury car event, and they came to us and said, this felt different, this was exciting, this had an authentic energy, right? And we took that idea of this authentic energy of being able to connect people and thought about the last missing link, which is how do we bring in the young kids who love these cars? How do we bring in the audience portion that we had seen Goodwood do so well? And I think the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory probably resonated with me so much as a kid when Charlie wins the golden ticket, right? And we thought, okay, we can turn this into a wonderful charitable opportunity and give people who may not be able to afford these cars yet, but are definitely the buyers of the future, let's allow them to come into Hypercar Invitational. And so very simply, we came up with this idea of charity laps. And this resonated so much with me because it was about bringing somebody who might never see some of these cars and actually be able to put them in the passenger seat to experience that. And this concept really took off, right? This golden ticket idea that you donated charitable funds, 100% goes to charity, and the very, very generous and kind owners of some of these cars would give people laps. That was kind of how we created that last missing link of bringing in the public into Hypercar Invitational. I think most memorable is last year, the incredibly nice owner of a McLaren F1 high downforce kit, a car which I'd never actually seen in person, and we got it on track. And first of all, this owner was a very good driver, and he obviously had 2 seats, so he was doing charity laps all day long. And the people were coming out of the car, and one guy in particular had tears in his eyes, and I almost got like contact emotion because I didn't get to go in the McLaren F1, but I was so happy for him because I knew what it meant to him. And I said, okay, obviously we're not always going to have McLaren F1s, but if we can generate this kind of emotion, this is good for everybody. It's a win-win for the manufacturers. Obviously, the guests who own some of these cars feel good about doing charitable activities. And for the golden ticket winners, they're going to have an experience they're going to be able to tell their kids, and it might bring them closer to these brands one day. And so we had to just keep developing on this. And but that was it. It was putting together all these pieces. The engineers, the designers doing these amazing dinners where you could tell the company story. We had guests experiencing their cars in a way that they never had been able to before. And we had kind of enthusiasts being able to come in and really touch this world and experience it in a way that we thought would really bring everybody together. And that was Hypercar 3, and that was in 2021. And then the question was, how do you refine this concept? What is going to be crystallized into the Hypercar Invitational identity? And that's all we started focusing on. So as we looked at, we closed out Hypercar Invitational 3, and we looked at how to crystallize the key elements to really improve on this experience. We took probably one testimonial, which was so important to us, from the leadership for Grazie of the Americas, and they told us, look, this is one of the first times we've really been able to get some of our Chiron customers on track, and they loved it. And we had like 9 Chirons on track at Laguna Seca. That is really how these cars are meant to be used. How can we improve on that? And we realized that in the US, driving your car at high speed is pretty tough. We don't have the Autobahn. And so the next goal was to rent an airport, and rent an airport with a really long runway so that we could allow people in relative safety to experience speeds approaching 200 miles an hour. And again, thanks to pitching our vision over and over and over, we found people in the right positions to help us out. We have so much gratitude towards David Ray with Hooked on Driving, who is our track host, who has such a great safety record, but also saw what was possible. The mayor of Salinas and others who said, look, what do you want to do? And we rented out a full active FAA airport with a 6,300-foot-long runway. And we now allowed people this year to drive their cars approaching 200 miles an hour in relative safety and experience what these cars really are able to do. And we realized this was the last critical piece of the Hypercar Invitational experience. You had these dinners where you met the founders, designers, and the engineers, and really heard the company's story. You got to drive your car on beautiful coastal roads down Highway 1 to Big Sur. We had the airport runway, which was a huge hit. We mixed it with some aerobatic flying and got some awesome footage there. And then we had 2 unlimited sound days at Laguna Seca. So now you had these 3.5 really perfectly curated days where the manufacturers really got to spend time with key targets and customers. And also we had the Make-A-Wish charity lap donations with everybody who was coming in from the outside with a golden ticket opportunity. And we brought it all together. And this year we had almost 300 people participating. And based on the feedback that we got, we realized we've now hit on what we believe is the formula for America's Dynamic Auto Show. And that sounds like a big word, but you have to really aim for the sky. And that's our vision, is to create America's Dynamic Auto Show, something that's more experiential, that's a beautiful show. You have opportunities to see things that you would never see, like, for example, the Pikes Peak Tesla Unplugged car with Randy Popes doing the shakedowns right before going to Pikes Peak. We had Valkyrie, thanks to Esther Martin Laganda, coming to do shakedown laps for the AMR Pro, breaking track records, giving people rides, just amazing experience. We had the US debut for the Zenvo automotive car, which has their new dealer in Denver, and really put together a show and an experience for everybody that was involved. Now we knew we had something special. And now we have a passionate team that is working already to create Hypercar Invitational 5 for 2023. And what we're doing is refining and making sure that we are offering something for every single stakeholder involved to come and be able to talk about the products and the cars that really move us. Next year is Hypercar Invitational 5, which we already cheesily probably are calling High Five. And we're having a lot of fun with that already. And we're gonna bring in some pretty amazing stuff as far as some of the world's best hypercars, which will now be in owners' hands, debuting in 2023 at our event. We want to bring the enthusiast world together, and we're excited to already start working on it just a week after HI4 just ended. So what does the future of Hypercar Invitational hold? Well, It all comes back to this idea of making a dream come to life. Our theme this year was from your bedroom poster to the driver's seat, which actually came from a dream I had as a kid, which was that I found my dream car, the Esdera Commendatore, in my parents' garage. And in my dream, I got to drive that car. Well, Hypercar Invitational enabled that dream to come true for me. The owner incredibly allowed us to take that car out of the Peterson Museum, put it on track. We did a beautiful movie with it. But it's not just a YouTube clip. It's actually the feeling that I would love, and our whole team really relates to, the feeling of getting every enthusiast who ever had a dream about a car, at least to be able to touch them, to see them, possibly to have a passenger ride, maybe even to drive them. And while you can't make every single part of that dream come true for everybody, we are only going to be successful if we not only create opportunities for today's buyers of certain cars, but also help the future generations who are going to work really, really hard to make their dreams come true. We want to bring them together. So that's the final piece. What we're working on for next year is probably the hardest part of all of this, which is to add a public element to Hypercar Invitational. Taking me back to when I went to Goodwood Festival of Speed and how amazed I was at how close the audience was to this experience. If we can create this, at least one of the days, have a public day for Hypercar Invitational, that will be the definition of success in my mind, because it allows everybody who, like me as a kid, dreamed of even seeing these cars to finally be able to touch, smell them, just experience these cars. And we're going to work very hard to make that happen. And if we do, that'll be the completion of the Hypercar Invitational vision. If we can hit on these points, then the vision of Hypercar Invitational is complete.